All right, let's dive in. Today we're taking a deep dive into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
It's a fascinating book.
It is. And, you know, it's not your typical finance book.
No.
It's not about picking stocks or, becoming a, day trader. It's really about the psychology behind our decisions.
Yeah.
And it's packed with these really interesting stories and examples that really make you think differently about money.
Yeah, he does a great job of kind of weaving those stories together
Yeah.
with the principles.
Exactly.
And it makes it really relatable and engaging.
Yeah. So one of the stories that I found really striking was the story of Ronald Reed. Have you heard of Ronald Reed?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who haven't, Ronald Reed was a janitor,
A gas station attendant.
a gas station attendant, thank you, who amassed a fortune, like
Yeah.
millions of dollars.
$8 million, I think.
$8 million,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And Housel contrasts his story with Richard Fuscone, who was a Harvard MBA.
Very successful on paper.
Yeah, high-powered,
Yeah.
very successful, but ended up bankrupt.
Yeah, it's such a stark contrast.
Yeah, so tell me, what is it about Ronald Reed's story that is so remarkable?
Well, it kind of flies in the face of what we traditionally think of as financial success, right? I mean,
Yeah.
here's a guy who, didn't have a fancy degree,
Right.
didn't come from a wealthy background. He was a gas station attendant and a janitor.
Yeah.
And yet he managed to accumulate this incredible wealth.
Yeah, and so how did he do it? Was it just luck? I mean, was he just, in the right place at the right time?
Well, I think luck plays a role in everyone's life, right? But Housel really digs into Ronald Reed's temperament,
Yeah.
his personality. And what he finds is that Ronald Reed was incredibly patient.
Okay.
He was disciplined. He lived well below his means.
Uh-huh.
And he understood the power of compounding, which is something we'll talk about more, I'm sure. But that was really the secret to his success. It wasn't brilliance. It wasn't some, insider trading scheme. It was just steady, consistent investing over a long period of time.
And what's interesting is you mentioned temperament, and that's something that Housel really emphasizes throughout the book. He says that success with money often depends less on how smart you are and more on how you behave.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really important takeaway.
Yeah.
Because we often think that, we need to be a financial genius or we need to have this, incredible understanding of the markets to be successful.
Yeah.
But what Housel is saying is that it's really more about our habits, our mindset.
Absolutely. It's about having those good habits, the discipline,
Yeah.
the patience to stick with a plan.
Yeah.
And Richard Fuscone's story is kind of a cautionary tale, right?
Right.
Because he was brilliant. I mean, he went to Harvard, had a successful career in finance.
Yeah.
But he made some big mistakes
Yeah.
during the 2008 financial crisis.
Right. Yeah.
And there were reports that he had taken on a lot of debt, and was kind of living a lifestyle that maybe wasn't sustainable
Right.
in the long run.
Yeah, and it just shows that even with all the, intelligence and education in the world, if you don't have that right temperament, that right mindset, you can still make some really costly mistakes.
Absolutely. And it's a good reminder that, even the smartest people can be susceptible to these kind of emotional biases when it comes to money.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see how success with money isn't just about, book smarts. It's about self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But this next topic, I think, is a good example of how our emotions can sometimes lead us to make decisions that don't seem logical on the surface.
Right.
So why do you think so many people, especially those who are struggling financially, spend money on lottery tickets?
That's a great question, and it's one that Housel digs into in the book.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you would think that if you're struggling financially,
Right.
the last thing you would do is spend money on something with such low odds of winning.
Right.
But the reality is that, the lowest income households spend a disproportionately larger amount on lottery tickets
Yeah.
than higher earners.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to make sense.
It doesn't make logical sense.
Right.
But again, we're talking about the psychology of money here.
Yeah.
And I think what it comes down to is hope.
Okay.
For someone who's struggling financially, the lottery offers a glimmer of possibility, however small.
Yeah.
It's a chance to escape their circumstances.
Right.
To dream of a better life.
Right. So it's more than just a a calculated financial decision.
Yeah.
It's an emotional one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's buying into a dream,
It's buying into a dream.
however unrealistic it may be.
Yeah, and I think it's a really powerful illustration of how our emotions can sometimes overpower our logic when it comes to money.
Yeah. And it's something that we all need to be aware of.
Yeah. Because we all have those emotional biases
Right.
that can lead us to make decisions that aren't always in our best interest.
Yeah. All right. So we're starting to see how our emotions, our temperament, our background all play a role in how we think about money.
Yeah.
But I want to shift gears a bit and talk about a concept that Housel calls compounding.
Okay.
And he uses this great story about Bill Gates to illustrate this point.
Yeah, the story of Bill Gates and his early access to computers
Right.
at Lakeside School.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that story. I mean, I've always heard that Bill Gates was, a programming prodigy, but I never knew the backstory.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and it really highlights the importance of being in the right place at the right time. So back in the 1960s, computers were incredibly rare and expensive.
Right.
Like most schools couldn't even dream of having one. But Lakeside School, where Bill Gates went, they had a really forward-thinking math teacher named Bill Dougal. And he saw the potential of computers, and he managed to convince the school to rent this teletype Model 30 computer. And I think it was, thanks to a donation from the Mothers Club and Dougal's initiative,
Wow.
they actually set up a timeshare system so students could have access to this computer after school hours.
Wow, that's amazing. So Bill Gates basically had this incredible opportunity.
Yeah, he had this very rare opportunity to learn programming at a time when most people hadn't even seen a computer, let alone used one.
Right.
And so he and his friend Paul Allen, they spent countless hours experimenting, learning, developing their programming skills.
So this early exposure really gave them a leg up.
It gave them a massive head start.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect example of how seemingly small advantages can compound over time to create these extraordinary outcomes.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the connection to compounding here.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, having one lucky break or making one great investment.
Right.
It's about those small, consistent actions over time. Yeah. And how they can build on each other.
Yeah, it's like imagine you invest a small amount of money, say $100, and it earns a modest 5% return each year.
Okay.
At first, the gains seem small,
Right.
but over time, those gains start to build on each other, and that initial $100 starts to grow exponentially.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the snowball effect here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the power of compounding. It's not about hitting a home run with a single investment. It's about letting those small gains accumulate over time.
So in a way, Gates's early access to computers was like an investment.
Yeah, it was an investment in his future.
Yeah, and it paid off in a big way.
It paid off enormously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great analogy because it takes a financial concept like compounding and applies it to a broader life lesson.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that small advantages sustained over time can lead to extraordinary results.
Mm.
So it's not just about finding that one, brilliant stock pick or winning the lottery.
Right.
It's about making consistent, intentional choices
Mhm.
that set us up for long-term success.
Exactly. And it's about, being patient, being disciplined, and having a long-term perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
This is really making me rethink my approach to personal finance. But, we've been talking a lot about building wealth and achieving success,
Yeah.
but I think it's also important to talk about the concept of enough.
Yeah.
And Housel tells this great story about the author Joseph Heller,
Right.
who was at a party hosted by a billionaire.
Uh-huh.
And someone made a comment that, this billionaire makes more money in a day than Heller did from his entire book, Catch-22.
Yeah.
And Heller's response was, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough.
Classic.
I love that. I mean, what a powerful statement,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
He's basically saying that true wealth isn't just about accumulating more and more. It's about reaching a point of contentment,
Absolutely.
of having enough to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, it's a reminder that, we can get so caught up in this pursuit of more without ever stopping to ask ourselves, how much is enough?
Right. And Housel also explores, the flip side of this. What happens when people never feel like they have enough?
Right.
And he uses the stories of Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, those are cautionary tales.
Yeah, for sure. To illustrate the dangers
Yeah.
of this insatiable desire for more.
Yeah, and both of those individuals were already incredibly wealthy
Right.
by any standard,
Yeah.
but they still wanted more,
Right.
and they were willing to break the law
Right.
to get it.
To get more.
And it just shows that, no matter how much money you have, it's never enough if you're always chasing more.
And I think it goes back to that idea of social comparison,
Yeah.
right? We're constantly comparing ourselves to others,
Yeah.
especially in a world where, wealth and status are so highly valued.
Yeah. It's easy to fall into that trap
Yeah.
of comparing yourself to others and feeling inadequate.
Right.
But, the reality is that everyone's situation is different.
Right.
Everyone's starting point is different.
Right.
And so it's really a pointless exercise
Yeah.
to compare yourself to others.
And it's a recipe for unhappiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's much more helpful to focus on your own goals, your own progress,
Mm-hmm.
and, define your own version of enough.
Define your own version of enough.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful idea, right? Because it really puts us back in the driver's seat
Yeah.
of our own financial lives.
Yeah. You get to decide
Yeah.
what enough is for you.
We don't have to, subscribe to someone else's definition of success.
Right.
We get to create our own.
Exactly.
Bro, and that's very empowering.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so we've talked about temperament compounding, the allure and danger of enough.
Right.
But now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something that might seem a little bit out of left field. What can we learn about building wealth from ice ages?
This is one of my favorite analogies in the book.
I love it. It's so unexpected.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, what do ice ages have to do with personal finance?
Right. Well, Housel uses this example of ice ages to illustrate the power of slow, steady accumulation over time.
Okay, so it's like that saying, slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly.
But how does that apply to investing?
Well, think about how ice ages form. It's not a sudden, dramatic event.
Right.
It's a gradual process of snow accumulating over centuries,
Okay.
slowly building up into these massive glaciers.
Right.
And it's the same with hoarding wealth. It's not about finding that one hot stock
Right.
that's going to make you rich overnight.
Right.
It's about consistently investing even small amounts and letting those gains compound over time.
Just like snowflakes accumulating over time.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about embracing the power of time and patience.
So instead of trying to, time the market or chase the latest investment fad, we should be focused on building a solid foundation and letting our money grow gradually over time.
Exactly. And, it's a shift in perspective, right? It's about recognizing that building wealth is often a marathon,
Yeah.
not a sprint.
Yeah.
And it requires a different mindset,
Yeah.
one that prioritizes discipline, consistency, and a long-term vision.
And that long-term vision is so important because it helps us to stay the course even when the market gets volatile.
Absolutely.
Right. Which brings me to our last big idea for today's deep dive.
Mm.
Housel talks about the price of success. And it's not what you might think.
Right.
He argues that the real cost of investment success isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in something less tangible.
Yeah.
Volatility.
Yeah. Okay.
Volatility. It's the ups and downs of the market.
Okay.
The fluctuations that inevitably come with investing.
So it's not about avoiding volatility altogether. It's about accepting that it's a necessary part of the journey.
Yeah.
But why do we so often view volatility as this bad thing, as, like a sign that we've made a mistake? Well, I think it's because we're wired to seek certainty and avoid uncertainty.
Yeah.
Our brains are constantly trying to predict and control the future.
Yeah.
And when things don't go according to plan, it triggers those feelings of anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
So when the market takes a sudden downturn, our instinct might be to sell everything and run for the hills.
Right.
But that's often the worst thing we can do.
Right.
Because it means we're selling low and we're locking in those losses.
Yeah. So how do we avoid making those fear-based decisions? How do we stay calm and rational when, it feels like the world is falling apart?
Well, I think it goes back to that mindset shift that we were talking about earlier. Instead of viewing volatility as a punishment or a sign of failure,
Yeah.
we need to see it as a fee, a cost of admission
Okay. I love that.
to the potential for long-term growth.
Yeah. Like a cover charge.
Exactly.
To get into the market party or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And that fee, that volatility, it's not something to be feared or avoided. It's simply part of the game. Right.
And by accepting it as a necessary cost, we can approach investing with more clarity, confidence, and resilience.
It's about having a long-term vision, right?
Yeah.
And not getting caught up in those short-term fluctuations.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's such a valuable insight.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the psychology of money. Last time, we talked about how our temperament and background can affect our decisions with money.
Right, like how our early experiences shape our beliefs.
Yeah, like that story about the janitor who became a multimillionaire.
Ronald Reed, yeah, fascinating story.
Really made me think. But this time, let's get a little bit more personal.
Okay.
Let's talk about how those early experiences, from our childhood or family, might still be affecting us today.
Yeah, it's like those money habits become ingrained in us.
Yeah, it's like they're part of our DNA almost.
Russell calls them money scripts.
Money scripts. Okay, I like that.
And they can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah,
often working without us even realizing it.
subconsciously, yeah. He uses this great example to explain it about the Great Depression.
The Great Depression, okay, a tough time.
It was. A lot of people suffered.
Yeah, but how does that relate to these money scripts?
Well, think about the people who lived through it.
Okay.
They saw firsthand how fragile the system could be.
Right, lost their savings, their jobs.
Everything.
Yeah, tough times.
It left a mark on them,
For sure.
a psychological one. Their whole outlook changed.
So it makes sense that they'd be more cautious with money afterwards.
And exactly. Saving became a priority. Debt was a no-no.
Makes sense.
Financial security became everything. Their money scripts were all about survival.
Right, shaped by those experiences. But that was a long time ago. Do those money scripts still matter today?
They do. They can stick with us for generations, influencing our decisions without us even realizing it.
Wow, that's powerful. So how do we, break free from those scripts, become more aware of them,
It starts with taking a look back.
back into our past?
Yeah. Think about your earliest memories with money. Okay.
What did you learn from your family about it?
Well, my parents always stressed the importance of saving. They weren't big spenders.
There you go. That's a money script.
Huh. Yeah, I guess it is.
And was money talked about openly in your home?
Not really. It was kind of, a taboo subject.
That's another one.
Interesting. So, by understanding those early lessons.
You can start to see how they might be influencing you today.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
And then you can choose. Stick with the script or rewrite it.
Rewrite it, like updating the software. I like that.
Exactly. Make it work for you, not against you.
Taking control of our financial narrative. Empowering stuff.
It is.
But, we've talked a lot about making plans, being patient. But what about those curveballs life throws at us?
The unexpected events.
Yeah, those. Pandemics, recessions, who knows what's next?
Right. The stuff you can't really plan for.
Exactly. Housel calls them tail events.
Because they're, way out there on the probability curve.
Yeah.
The outliers. So how do we deal with those? It feels kind of like out of our control.
It is, to a certain extent. But that's where humility comes in.
Humility.
Yeah, accepting that we can't predict everything.
Makes sense.
We can't control the future, but we can control how we prepare.
Okay, so like having an emergency fund.
Exactly.
This is
Smart. Having that cushion can make all the difference.
Gives you peace of mind.
It does.
Okay, so prepare for the unexpected. Got it. But those tail events, they can be scary, even if you're financially ready.
Oh, for sure. The psychological impact is huge.
Yeah, how do you not freak out when those things happen?
Well, it goes back to those money scripts.
Oh, okay.
If you're programmed to fear volatility, to see it as a threat.
You're going to panic.
Exactly. But if you understand it's part of the process, it's a fee you pay for growth.
You can ride it out.
You can stay calm, stick to the plan.
Okay, so
Yeah.
mindset matters. But what about the stories we tell ourselves about money?
Ooh, that's a great segue. That's actually what we're going to talk about next.
Oh, perfect. Because I think we all have those stories, those narratives running in our heads. All right, welcome back to our final deep dive into the psychology of money. We've covered a lot of ground already, but I'm really excited about this last part. We're going to talk about stories, narratives.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to think about finance, right? Like, what do stories have to do with money?
Exactly.
But Housel makes a really compelling argument.
Okay, I'm all ears.
He says that we use stories to make sense of the world,
Okay, that makes sense.
to understand things, to connect the dots.
Right, like a narrative helps us see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And money is no different.
So we're not just looking at numbers and facts.
Not just the raw data, no. We create stories around those numbers to make them mean something to us.
Okay, so like what kind of stories?
Well, think about investing. You hear a story about someone making a fortune in the stock market.
Right, like that friend of a friend who became a Bitcoin millionaire.
Exactly. And suddenly you start thinking, maybe I could do that too.
Yeah, I've been there.
It's a story we tell ourselves, a narrative of possibility.
But is it a realistic one?
That's the key. Housel cautions us to be aware of those stories we're creating.
Okay, so check ourselves, basically.
Yeah. Are those stories based on facts, on solid reasoning, or are they just wishful thinking? Are they driven by fear or greed?
It's like we need to become better financial storytellers.
In a way, yes. More critical thinkers.
Yeah, not just buying into any narrative that comes along.
Exactly. We need to examine the evidence, look for the truth behind the story.
But it's not just our own stories we need to be wary of, right?
No, there's a whole world of financial narratives out there.
Oh yeah, everyone's got advice and opinion, a hot tip.
Family, friends, the media, financial gurus, it's a constant barrage.
And it's hard to know who to trust.
It is. That's why Housel emphasizes the importance of being a discerning consumer of financial information.
Okay, so do your research, basically.
Yeah, question everything.
Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly. Look for unbiased sources, credible experts.
Develop that financial BS detector.
That's a good way to put it.
So much of this comes down to, like, taking control,
Absolutely.
making conscious choices, not just reacting to the latest headline or hot stock tip.
And that ties into another big theme from the book, freedom.
Freedom. Yeah, I like the sound of that.
It's something we all crave.
For sure.
And Housel argues that true financial freedom isn't just about having lots of money.
Okay, so it's not about the number in your bank account.
Not entirely, no. It's about having options.
Options, okay.
The ability to make choices, to live life on your own terms.
So, like, being able to travel or retire early.
It could be that, yes. Or maybe it's having the freedom to pursue a passion, to start a business, to spend more time with loved ones.
It's about aligning your money with your values.
Exactly. It's about having the resources to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about being rich. It's about being free.
Beautifully put.
Okay, so how do we get there? How do we create that freedom?
It starts with making conscious choices today. Saving, investing, building those good financial habits.
Okay, so planning for the future.
But also knowing what you're working towards. What does freedom look like for you?
Right, defining those goals.
So you can make decisions that support those goals, even if it means some sacrifices in the short term.
It's about playing the long game, right?
It is.
But, you know, it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in today's world with social media and everything.
Yeah, it's like everyone's always showcasing their best life.
A highlight reel.
Exactly. And you start feeling like you're not doing enough, not measuring up.
The comparison trap.
Yeah, it can be a real downer.
And it's completely pointless. Housel is very clear about that.
How so?
Everyone's journey is different.
Okay, different starting points, different goals.
Different values, different priorities. It's apples and oranges.
So what's the solution?
Focus on your own path. Define your own version of success.
Write your own story.
Exactly. Celebrate your own wins. And don't get sidetracked by what others are doing.
That's such a powerful message. It's about taking back control, defining our own narrative.
And that's what the psychology of money is all about. It's about understanding the forces that shape our financial decisions, both internal and external.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these ideas.
I agree. So much to think about.
And for everyone listening, I highly recommend picking up a copy of this book. It's a game changer.
It really is.
It'll make you think differently about money, about success, about life. That's what we're all about here, right?
Absolutely. Expanding our perspectives, challenging our assumptions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways.
Okay, fire away.
Patience, discipline, long-term thinking. Those are essential for building wealth.
Couldn't agree more.
Embrace volatility. It's not a punishment. It's the price of admission to the game.
Well said.
And most importantly, define success on your own terms. Don't let anyone else write your story.
Great advice.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of ideas.